December 9th, 2025, an undisclosed location somewhere in Russia. As the first light of dawn breaks over a frozen runway, the silence is shattered. Two massive silhouettes begin to move. Their engines roar to life. Moments later, they roll forward, slowly, deliberately, before lifting into the pale winter sky. These are Tu-95 strategic bombers, heavy, lethal, enduring. They first flew in 1952, during the height of the Cold War. More than 7 decades later, they remain operational, expected to serve until 2040. Few aircraft in the world have survived this long. Their mission today is not symbolic, it is strategic. They are heading east, thousands of kilometers, toward one of the most contested regions on Earth. Their destination, the East China Sea and the Western Pacific. And they will not be flying alone. This region is enormous. To the south lies Taiwan, a self-governed island Beijing considers its own. To the northeast, Japan and South Korea, both longtime US allies. To the west, China, a rising superpower with expanding military reach. These waters carry trillions of dollars in global trade every year. Oil shipments, semiconductors, manufactured goods. But commerce is only one layer of importance. Strategically, this region sits at the heart of China's regional ambitions, America's alliance system, and Russia's return to Asia. Any military movement here sends ripples across the world. On this day, the message is unmistakable. China and Russia are flying together. As the Russian bombers push deeper into the Pacific theater, they rendezvous with Chinese aircraft already airborne. Among them, H-6 heavy bombers, China's long-range strike platforms, J-16 fighter jets, modern multi-role aircraft, and support planes providing early warning and coordination. Together, they form a joint strategic patrol. This is not a drill announced weeks in advance. This is not routine training. This is a coordinated display of power, and it does not go unnoticed. Radar screens light up in South Korea. Military controllers track multiple aircraft approaching their Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ. An ADIZ is not sovereign airspace, but it acts as an early warning buffer. Any unidentified or uncooperative aircraft triggers a response. South Korea detects 7 Russian aircraft, 2 Chinese aircraft. The response is immediate. Fighter jets are scrambled. Pilots are ordered into the air. Within hours, Seoul lodges a formal diplomatic protest with both Beijing and Moscow. But South Korea is only the first to react. Soon after, Japan follows suit. Its air defense forces scramble fighters as the joint patrol approaches Japanese airspace. This time, Japanese aircraft get close enough to photograph the formation. The images confirm what radar had already suggested. The patrol includes Russian Tu-95 bombers, Chinese H-6 bombers, Chinese J-16 fighter jets, a Russian A-50 airborne early warning aircraft, and Russian Su-30 fighter jets. This is not accidental overlap, this is coordination. Japan's defense officials begin reconstructing the flight path. According to Japan's assessment, the Russian bombers first flew from the Sea of Japan, then passed through the Tsushima Strait into the East China Sea. There, they linked up with the Chinese bombers. Together, the aircraft circled around Japan, escorted by 8 Chinese fighter jets and 1 Russian early warning aircraft. From Tokyo's perspective, this is a deliberate show of force. Japan's defense minister issues a stark warning. The repeated joint bomber flights by both countries signify an expansion and intensification of activities around our nation. We cannot help but view them as a direct demonstration of power against Japan. This is a matter of grave concern for our national security. And this was not an isolated incident. Just 3 days earlier, on December 6th, tensions had already been rising. This time, the focus was near Japan's Okinawa Islands. China's aircraft carrier Liaoning was operating in nearby waters. As evening fell, J-15 fighter jets launched from the carrier's deck. As protocol dictates, Japan scrambled its own aircraft, F-15 fighters, to monitor the situation. Then something unusual happened, something dangerous. Japanese pilots reported that Chinese fighters locked their radar onto Japanese aircraft. In military aviation, this is no small matter. Radar lock is the final step before launching a guided missile. While locking radar does not guarantee a shot will be fired, it is universally understood as an aggressive act. Japan says it happened twice. First at 1632 local time from a distance of 52 kilometers. Again at 1837 from 148 kilometers. Tokyo immediately protested. China denied the allegation. Beijing claimed its drills were professional and lawful and accused Japan of provocation. China's position was firm. Its exercises complied fully with international law and practice. They were standard and beyond reproach. It was Japan's aircraft that created unnecessary danger by approaching Chinese training operations. Japan rejected that explanation. According to Tokyo, there was no adequate warning. No clear notification of the scale of the drills, the exact airspace involved, the timing, the coordinates. No maritime or aviation warnings were issued in advance. From Japan's perspective, this lack of transparency created unnecessary risk. Both sides accuse the other of escalation, and neither is backing down. These confrontations are not new. China has frequently challenged Japanese aircraft in the region. Japan responds every time. In 2023, Japan recorded 479 interceptions. In 2024, the number was 464. But 2025 is different. Because the political context has changed. Japan has a new prime minister. She is known as a foreign policy hawk. Her stance toward China is firm and popular at home. In Parliament, she was asked a direct question. What would Japan do if China invaded Taiwan? Her answer sent shockwaves across the region. She said such an invasion would create a survival-threatening scenario for Japan, and that Japan would not remain on the sidelines. Beijing reacted swiftly. China curtailed tourist travel to Japan. It banned seafood imports. Diplomatic rhetoric hardened. Military activity increased. The message from Beijing was blunt. Interference in Taiwan would be met with overwhelming force. Anyone who challenges China's bottom line will face resolute countermeasures and suffer a crushing defeat before the will of the Chinese people. On paper, the balance is clear. China ranks third globally in military power. Japan ranks eighth, China fields over 3,300 aircraft, around 200 fighter jets, and more than 750 naval vessels. Japan operates roughly 1,400 aircraft, about 217 fighters, and around 159 naval vessels. China has more: aircraft carriers, submarines, destroyers. But numbers alone do not tell the full story. Japan's forces are technologically advanced, highly trained, deeply integrated with US capabilities. And this is no longer a bilateral issue. Initially, many regional actors hesitated to take sides. The prevailing view was that escalation benefits no one. But events moved quickly. South Korea began scrambling jets. Russia entered the picture more openly. Moscow has its own dispute with Tokyo over islands claimed by both nations. Japan also supports Ukraine and participates in sanctions against Russia. The alignment was inevitable. Russia and China began operating together. Then others spoke up. For the first time in this flare-up, Washington openly criticized China's actions. Taiwan called the drills inappropriate and destabilizing. Unilateral actions that use coercion or force threaten regional peace and stability. Major powers must act responsibly. The chessboard is now crowded. This front line is not new, but it is growing more dangerous. East Asia and Southeast Asia are filled with US allies, economically tied to China, strategically tied to America. This contradiction defines the region's security dilemma. Expect more pressure before any stability emerges. The skies will remain crowded, the waters tense, the margin for error thin. The question now is not whether tensions will rise, it is how far they will go before something breaks. Because behind every interception, every radar lock, every diplomatic protest, there is a deeper strategy at play, one that stretches far beyond Japan, China, or even the Pacific. For Moscow, this patrol was about more than solidarity. Russia has been steadily re-entering Asia's security architecture. After years of focusing on Europe, the Kremlin now sees the Pacific as a secondary front, one where pressure can be applied indirectly against the West. Japan is a perfect target. It supports Ukraine, it enforces sanctions, it hosts US military bases, and it has an unresolved territorial dispute with Russia. The islands, claimed by both sides, remain a lingering wound from World War II. By flying strategic bombers near Japan alongside China, Moscow sends a signal. Russia is not isolated. Russia still projects power, and Russia can complicate America's alliances far from Europe. For China, the logic is even clearer. Beijing's core objectives remain unchanged: Taiwan, regional dominance, and pushing US forces farther from its coastline. Japan stands directly in the way. Geographically, Japan forms a barrier, an island chain that limits China's naval and air access to the wider Pacific. Militarily, Japan hosts US forces capable of striking Chinese assets in any Taiwan scenario. Politically, Japan's new leadership has abandoned ambiguity, so China applies pressure the way it knows best. Not with war, but with constant friction. This is not open conflict. This is gray zone warfare. Actions designed to stay just below the threshold of war. Air patrols, carrier drills, radar locks, near misses, information warfare, economic pressure. Each incident alone is manageable. Together, they wear down the opponent, force mistakes, test reactions, measure resolve, and sometimes create fear. The most dangerous aspect of this strategy is human error. Fighter pilots fly at high speed. Fatigue sets in, weather changes, radars glitch, one wrong maneuver, one misunderstood signal, one pilot panics. History is filled with wars that began not with intent, but with accident. In crowded skies like those over the East China Sea, the margin for error is razor thin. South Korea finds itself in an uncomfortable spot. It relies heavily on China economically. It depends on the United States militarily. And it remains technically at war with North Korea. Being pulled into Sino-Japanese tensions is the last thing Seoul wants. Yet geography offers no escape. Chinese and Russian aircraft entering South Korea's ADI's force responses. Every time, neutrality is becoming impossible. For Washington, these developments confirm long-held fears. China is not acting alone, it is coordinating. Russia's presence transforms bilateral tensions into multi-front pressure. The US now faces a hostile Russia in Europe, a rising China in Asia, and growing coordination between the two. America's allies watch closely. If Japan is pressured into retreat, others will follow. If Japan stands firm, escalation becomes likely. Though not directly involved in these incidents, Taiwan sits at the center of everything. Every patrol, every drill, every warning. They are rehearsals, signals, preparations. Japan knows this. China knows Japan knows. That is why Taiwan is always present. Even when unspoken, China's response was not limited to military signaling. Tourism restrictions hit Japan's service sector. Seafood bans targeted coastal communities. These moves are calculated. They hurt, but not enough to trigger retaliation. Economic pain becomes political pressure. Domestic voices begin asking, is confrontation worth the cost? This is part of the strategy. Japan faces a historic choice. For decades, it relied on economic engagement, diplomatic restraint, and strategic ambiguity. Those tools are losing effectiveness. China is stronger, Russia is back. The region is militarizing. Japan's leadership believes deterrence, not accommodation, is now the safer path. But deterrence invites confrontation, and confrontation invites risk. East and Southeast Asia live with a contradiction. Security depends on the United States. Prosperity depends on China. Breaking with either carries consequences. That paradox shapes every decision, every silence, every statement. This crisis will not resolve quickly. There will be pauses, then flare-ups, then quieter periods. But the trajectory is clear. More patrols, more joint exercises, more warnings, more lines tested. Stability will come only after escalation. History suggests it always does.